My blood turned to ice as Amanda slid each glossy photograph across the polished mahogany dining table. The snapshots showed me, head tilted, hand occasionally touching an arm, smiling and engaged with different men in restaurants and cafes around the city. The sharp intake of breath from my mother-in-law Eleanor filled the suddenly airless room. "Look at these," Amanda said, her voice dripping with performative concern as she turned to my husband. "While David has been working himself to exhaustion, she's been running around town with other men." She placed her hand on his shoulder, standing too close to him, while Jessica, the woman he'd been sleeping with for months, sat silently at his other side. Amanda's eyes gleamed with triumph as she delivered her final blow. "Now you don't have to feel guilty about Jessica, and you definitely don't have to give Sophie anything in the divorce." My name is Sophie Bennett. I'm 32, and this is the story of how I turned my husband's family's betrayal into the most important lesson they'd ever learn. The family I had devoted 8 years to gathered around those photos like vultures. Eleanor picked one up with trembling fingers, her voice breaking with practiced disappointment. "Sophie, how could you? We welcomed you into our family." Once, her words would have cut deep. Now I just observed her performance with clinical detachment. "What do you have to say for yourself?" Amanda demanded, one hand propped on her hip, the other dramatically pointing at the evidence spread before everyone. I took a deliberately slow sip of water, my eyes moving across the table. David still wouldn't meet my gaze. His parents looked appropriately devastated, though I noticed his father, George, seemed more uncomfortable than angry. Amanda stood tall, her posture radiating righteousness. "Nice pictures," I said calmly. "The lighting is excellent. You must have paid your private investigator quite a lot." Amanda's triumphant smile faltered. This wasn't the tearful denial she had scripted for this moment. "That's all you have to say?" she snapped. "You're not even going to deny it?" I reached into my purse, feeling everyone tense, waiting for tears, or perhaps a desperate confession. Instead, I placed my tablet on the table, its screen dark and reflective against the wood. Why would I deny it? My voice remained steady. Those men are all divorce lawyers. The silence that followed was absolute. "What?" Amanda stuttered, her composure cracking. I pointed to each photo methodically. "That's James Morrison, the best family lawyer in the city. This is Michael Turner. His firm specializes in cases involving infidelity. And this dinner, that's William Parker. He's particularly skilled at handling cases where people try to hide assets before a divorce." Amanda's face drained of color. David suddenly found his water glass fascinating. "You see," I continued, "when I discovered David and Jessica 3 months ago, I decided to prepare properly." "You're lying," Amanda said, but uncertainty had replaced her confidence. I activated my tablet, displaying emails and signed agreements. The wonderful thing about legal consultations is that there's always documentation. I scrolled through the files deliberately. "But that's not even the most interesting part," I added, finally looking directly at David. "What do you mean?" Eleanor's voice trembled. "Well," I said, "during one of these meetings, I learned something fascinating about recent property transfers in this family. Lots of money and houses changing hands, new companies being formed." I let the implications settle over the room. George shifted uncomfortably in his chair. David frowned, turning to his father. "Dad, is that why you had me sign those papers last month? You said it was just routine family business." I watched realization dawn on his face. His family wasn't just helping him cheat, they were systematically hiding assets before the divorce. "David, sweetheart, we were just protecting you," Eleanor began. "Actually," I cut her off, "you were committing fraud." I smiled thinly. "And my lawyers have documented everything." Amanda collapsed into a chair, the architect of her perfect trap suddenly finding herself ensnared. "You knew," she whispered. "You knew this whole time." I nodded, gathering my belongings. "Next time you hire a private investigator, make sure they're not working for both sides." I stood, smoothing my dress. "Oh, and David, your lawyer will receive the paperwork tomorrow. You might want to read it carefully, especially the part about fraud." At the door, I turned back to Amanda. "Thanks for the photos. They'll make excellent evidence." My heels struck the floor like a metronome as I walked out. Only when I reached my car did I finally allow myself a small, private smile. They thought they had trapped me, but they had no idea what was coming. The next few days unleashed chaos. My phone buzzed constantly with messages from David's family, threats mingled with tearful pleas. Amanda cycled between rage and panic, her texts growing increasingly desperate. "You can't do this to us, we're family," her latest message read. That word, family, lingered in my mind. They hadn't treated me like family when they were planning to leave me with nothing. I archived her message without responding and focused on my preparations. James Morrison's law office projected exactly the power it intended: gleaming wood, supple leather chairs, and an atmosphere of quiet authority. I reviewed documents in the conference room while waiting for the others to arrive. Right on schedule, David entered with his lawyer, followed by Eleanor and George. Amanda trailed behind, attempting confidence, but failing visibly. "Mrs. Bennet," James greeted me with a professional nod. "Shall we begin?" I watched David's expression as James methodically presented our evidence. He paled noticeably when we displayed our timeline. Every suspicious property transfer, every hastily created company, every deliberate attempt to hide money. Eleanor clutched his arm when James mentioned potential criminal charges. "This is nonsense," David's lawyer protested. "These were normal family business decisions." "Were they?" I asked, sliding forward a stack of documents. "Because these records show my name was removed from family business assets exactly 3 months ago, precisely when David began his affair. Quite a coincidence, don't you think?" George shifted uncomfortably. He had always been the weakest link, too concerned about his social standing to risk public scandal. "Now," James continued, "we're prepared to be reasonable. Mrs. Bennet helped build this family's success. She simply wants her fair share." "Fair share?" Amanda snapped. "She's trying to ruin us." I turned to her, maintaining my composure. "No, Amanda, I'm protecting what I helped create." I paused. "Would you like me to play the recording of you and David discussing how to keep the gold digger from getting anything?" Her face went white. David's head snapped up. "You recorded us?" "No," I replied calmly. "Your mistress did. Jessica was quite helpful once I showed her proof that you were planning to discard her too, once you'd secured your assets." The room erupted. Eleanor dissolved into tears. George demanded to speak with his personal lawyer. Amanda screamed about betrayal. Through it all, I sat quietly, watching my husband realize how thoroughly he'd been outplayed. "Here's what's going to happen," James spoke over the chaos, his voice commanding immediate silence. "We have documented evidence of attempted fraud. We can pursue this criminally, or we can reach a reasonable settlement today. Your choice." David's lawyer requested a moment with his client. As they huddled in the corner, I could see the fight draining from David's body. He'd always been arrogant, convinced of his own cleverness, but now he looked hollowed out. "We'll agree to fair terms," his lawyer finally announced. "Excellent," James smiled. "Mrs. Bennet has already outlined her requirements." He distributed copies of my settlement proposal. I'd been thorough but not vindictive. I wanted what I'd helped build, nothing more. "This is outrageous," Eleanor exclaimed, but George placed a restraining hand on her arm. "Sign it, David," he said quietly. "We can't risk this getting out." As David picked up the pen, Amanda made one last desperate attempt. "Wait!" Those photos, they were in public places. She was flaunting these meetings. I couldn't help but laugh softly. Of course they were public. I wanted you to see them. Every lunch, every coffee meeting. I knew you were having me followed. I just made sure your investigator captured exactly what I wanted you to see. The realization that they'd been played at their own game finally silenced them. One by one, the documents were signed. As James gathered the paperwork, I stood to leave. "Sophie," David called, his voice strange. "When did you get so calculating?" I paused at the door. I learned from the best, didn't I? Family taught me. The irony wasn't lost on anyone in the room. As I walked out of the office, I felt lighter than I had in months. Sometimes the best revenge isn't just about winning, it's about showing them they underestimated you all along. Outside, the autumn air felt crisp and clean. My phone buzzed with a message from Jessica. "It's done. Thank you for showing me the truth about him." I smiled, remembering how easily David's mistress had become my ally once I showed her proof of his pattern. His promises to her, his plans to discard her just like me after securing his wealth. Sometimes the strongest alliances come from unexpected places. Driving home, I thought about family, not the one that had betrayed me, but the one I would build for myself now, on my own terms. 6 months after the settlement, I sat on the balcony of my new apartment, sipping coffee and watching the city awaken. Morning sunlight cast long shadows across my newly furnished living room, highlighting the fresh start I'd created. My phone buzzed with a text from Jessica of all people. We'd maintained an unlikely friendship after everything. "You won't believe who I just saw at Riverside Cafe. Amanda, she actually tried to pretend she didn't see me." I smiled, remembering how thoroughly the family had unraveled after our meeting. Their carefully constructed facade of perfect family business had cracked under the weight of their own schemes. George had retired early, claiming health issues, but everyone knew it was to avoid the whispers at his precious country club. Eleanor had thrown herself into charity work, desperately trying to maintain their social standing. Amanda perhaps had faced the harshest reality check. Her role in the attempted fraud had cost her position in the family company. Last I'd heard, she was working as a junior accountant at a small firm, a significant step down from her former executive title. My phone rang. James Morrison. "Sophie," he greeted warmly. "Just wanted to let you know the last of the transfers are complete. Everything's officially settled." "Thank you, James, for everything." "You know," he said thoughtfully, "in all my years practicing law, I've never seen someone handle betrayal with such strategic precision. Have you ever considered a career change?" I laughed, but his words resonated. In outmaneuvering David and his family, I'd discovered parts of myself I never knew existed: strength, cunning, and an ability to see several moves ahead. Later that afternoon, I met Laura, my closest friend, for lunch. She'd been my rock throughout everything, one of the few people who knew the whole story from the beginning. "Have you heard?" she asked, sliding into her seat. "David's been demoted. Apparently, some of his business decisions during the divorce drama didn't sit well with the board." I shook my head. "I'm not surprised. He always did think he was smarter than everyone else." "Speaking of smart," Laura leaned forward, "how's the new venture going?" After the settlement, I'd used part of my funds to start a consulting firm helping other women navigate complex divorces and financial disputes. It felt right, using my experience to help others protect themselves. "We're expanding," I said, unable to hide my pride. "Opened a second office last week." "Look at you," Laura grinned. "From being blindsided by your husband's betrayal to running your own empire. Who would have thought?" I reflected on the woman I'd been a year ago, trusting, naive, willing to believe in family loyalty above all else. That woman was gone, replaced by someone stronger, wiser, but not bitter. If anything, I was grateful for the lessons learned. My phone buzzed again, another text from Eleanor. "I miss you. The family isn't the same without you." I archived it without responding. Some bridges, once burned, shouldn't be rebuilt. That evening, as I reviewed applications for my firm's mentorship program, I reflected on how life had changed. The family that had tried to destroy me had inadvertently set me free. Their attempts to leave me with nothing had pushed me to become something more than I'd ever imagined. The doorbell rang. Jessica with a bottle of wine. Our monthly catch-up sessions had become a tradition of sorts. "To Karma," she raised her glass, settling onto my couch. "David's dating someone new, by the way. Poor girl has no idea what she's getting into." "Should we warn her?" I asked, half joking. Jessica laughed. "Something tells me she'll figure it out on her own. Besides, I hear she's quite clever with computers. Maybe she'll catch on faster than we did." We shared a knowing look. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about moving forward while watching karma do its work. as the sun set over the city, casting an orange glow through my windows. I felt at peace. The family that had tried to write me off as naive had taught me the most valuable lesson of all. Never underestimate someone who has nothing left to lose. My new life wasn't built on revenge or bitterness. It was built on wisdom, strength, and the knowledge that sometimes the worst betrayals lead to the best beginnings. I raised my glass to the setting sun, silently thanking them for teaching me exactly who I could become. The story of how my husband's family tried to destroy me had become the catalyst for my greatest transformation. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about getting better. The RSVP card trembled in my hand, the gold embossing catching the light as I stared at the names listed for Table 1. Leonardo and Sofia, Fernando and Isabella, Beatriz and Eduardo, Gustavo and Valentina, Mr. and Mrs. Vega. My name, Natalie, was nowhere to be found. Not at Table 1. Not at any table. My throat tightened as I stood frozen in my childhood bedroom, surrounded by the pastel walls I'd outgrown years ago. From downstairs, I could hear my mother on the phone, her voice animated as she discussed flower arrangements for my sister's wedding, the same wedding I had just discovered I wouldn't be attending. Beatriz, the lilies arrived. They're absolutely stunning. My mother's voice floated up the stairs as I gripped the seating chart tighter, my fingernails leaving crescent indentations in the expensive cardstock. 3 months I'd spent helping my sister choose those lilies, accompanying her to 5 different florists, creating spreadsheets of prices and availability. 3 months of, "You're the only one who understands my vision, Nat." My name is Natalie. I'm 19, and this is the story of how I learned that family loyalty only matters when it's convenient. I wasn't supposed to see the final seating chart. It had been delivered while Beatrice was out, and I'd signed for the package thinking it contained the custom napkins we'd ordered together. When I opened it and saw final seating arrangement, do not revise. Emblazoned across the top, curiosity got the better of me. That's when I saw it. The family table, complete with all my siblings and their partners. Everyone except me. The worst part wasn't discovering I'd been excluded. It was realizing this wasn't the first time. Leonardo had gotten married when I was 10, declaring his wedding adults only despite my tearful pleas. I'd spent that day with a teenage babysitter while my parents celebrated with the real family. Fernando followed suit 2 years later when I was 12, maintaining the tradition despite my improved behavior and maturity. By the time Gustavo got married when I was 17, I didn't even bother asking, though I noticed my 18-year-old cousin had somehow made the cut. But Beatrice was different, or so I thought. She was my only sister, the one who called me her mini-me. When she got engaged, she immediately asked me to help with planning. "You have the best taste," she'd said. "I need you there every step of the way." For months, I'd canceled plans with friends, rearranged my college application schedule, and spent weekends driving to vendor appointments. I'd become her unofficial wedding coordinator, all while believing this time would be different. "What are you doing with that?" Beatrice stood in the doorway, her eyes locked on the seating chart in my hands. I hadn't heard her come up the stairs. "I thought it was the napkins," I said, my voice steady despite the earthquake happening inside me. "Interesting table arrangement." Her face shifted from surprise to something harder. "Nat, it's not what you think." "Really? Because it looks like I'm helping plan a wedding I'm not invited to. Again." She sighed, stepping into the room and closing the door. "We decided to keep it adults only, for consistency with the other weddings. It's not personal." "Not personal?" The laugh that escaped me sounded foreign to my own ears. "I've spent 3 months helping you plan every detail of this wedding. I wrote your vows, Beatrice. I designed your invitations. But I'm not adult enough to attend?" She glanced away, avoiding my eyes. "Eduardo's family is very traditional. They expect certain things, and the venue has a strict limit." "The venue that I found for you? That I negotiated the contract for?" My voice rose despite my efforts to control it. Stop lying. You're excluding me because it's easier than standing up to Leonardo and his traditions. Just admit it. Fine, she snapped. Yes, Leonardo thought it would be weird to suddenly include you when you weren't at any of our other weddings. He said it would look like we were playing favorites. The irony was so sharp it could draw blood. Heaven forbid you play favorites with your actual sister, I said quietly. The one who's been working on your wedding for free for 3 months. Nat, don't be dramatic. You'll have your own wedding someday. You'll understand then. Something crystallized in me at that moment, a perfect, clear certainty. Yes, I said slowly, I will have my own wedding someday, and I'll remember this moment very clearly when I do. 6 years passed. 6 years of holidays where my siblings talked about their perfect wedding days while I sat silently. 6 years of watching Leonardo become a father, Fernando start his business, Gustavo buy his dream house, and Beatriz have her first child. Milestones celebrated at gatherings where they treated me with the casual disregard reserved for a distant cousin. I finished college, built my career, and met Quinn. When he proposed on our 3rd anniversary, my first thought wasn't about dresses or venues. It was about the moment I'd been quietly planning for 6 years. So, who's on the family guest list? Quinn asked one evening as we sat surrounded by wedding planning books. I should start collecting addresses. I handed him a neatly typed list. Just my parents. He looked up, confused. What about your siblings? And their spouses? They're not invited, I said simply. He put down his pen. Nat, are you sure? I know things have been strained, but... I'm very sure, I replied. They didn't think I was important enough to witness their vows. I don't think they're important enough to witness mine. The first hint of the storm came 3 days after we mailed the invitations. My phone lit up with a notification from the family group chat. Beatrice wrote, Hey Nat, think there might be an issue with the mail? Mom got her invitation, but we haven't received ours yet. Fernando added, Same here. Did you send them all at once? I read the messages and set my phone down without responding. The next day, my mother called. I let it ring 4 times before answering. Natalie, is everything okay with the invitations? Your siblings haven't received theirs. The invitations were sent correctly, I said, keeping my voice neutral. Everyone who's invited has received one. The silence stretched between us, heavy with realization. You can't be serious, she finally said, her voice rising. You're not inviting your own siblings to your wedding? What kind of statement are you trying to make? The same statement they made to me 4 times over. They didn't consider me important enough to attend their weddings, so I don't consider them important enough to attend mine. That was different. You were a child then. I was 17 at Gustavo's wedding, Mom, old enough to help plan Beatrice's wedding 3 months later, but not old enough to attend. This is ridiculous. Is Quinn putting you up to this? You were never this vindictive before him. I almost laughed. This has nothing to do with Quinn. This is about respect, something this family has never shown me. They made their choices, and now I'm making mine. She hung up without saying goodbye. The next morning, my phone exploded with notifications. Leonardo had sent a lengthy message in the family chat. Natalie, I understand you might have felt hurt about not being at our weddings, but you were a child. It wasn't personal. I thought you would have gotten over this childish resentment by now. Family should come before petty revenge. I waited an hour before responding, each word carefully chosen. It's not about getting over anything. It's about fairness. If I wasn't important enough to be included in the most significant days of your lives, why should you be included in mine? You established the precedent, not me. His response came immediately. You're being a spoiled brat. Family should always come first. I stared at the message, feeling a strange sense of calm. Where was this family-first mentality when I was crying outside Beatrice's venue, watching through windows as they celebrated without me? 2 days later, my parents arrived unannounced at our apartment. I opened the door to find them standing there, my father's face flushed with anger before he even stepped inside. I reluctantly let them in, and they made their way to our living room without waiting for an invitation. "What will people think, Natalie?" my mother demanded, pacing our living room. "What kind of person doesn't invite their own siblings to their wedding?" "The kind whose siblings didn't invite her to theirs," I replied evenly. "That was different, and you know it," my father cut in. "This is childish and selfish." Something snapped inside me. Childish and selfish? I was a child when I begged to attend Leonardo's wedding. I was a child when I cried because I couldn't see Fernando get married. I was a child when Beatrice had me help plan her entire wedding only to exclude me from the guest list. And you called me dramatic then. Now as an adult, I'm making a decision based on how I've been treated, and you're still dismissing my feelings. I took a deep breath. I'm not changing my mind. They're not coming to my wedding. And if you keep defending them instead of understanding me, you won't be there either. The room went silent. My mother's face paled, and my father's complexion darkened further. Without another word, they left, the door slamming behind them. In the weeks that followed, the messages became increasingly desperate. Beatrice tried emotional manipulation, sending pictures of her children with the caption, "They were so excited about being in Auntie Nat's wedding." Gustavo's wife called to check if everything was okay, a transparent attempt to change my mind. Fernando left voicemails about family unity and rising above pettiness. I saved each message and voicemail in a special folder labeled Consequences. Our wedding was set for 6 months after our engagement, giving us enough time to plan everything exactly how we wanted. On my wedding day, the absence of siblings felt like the removal of a weight I'd carried for years. The ceremony was exactly what Quinn and I had planned. Intimate, joyful, and surrounded by people who genuinely cared about both of us. As we shared our first dance, I caught a glimpse of my parents who had ultimately decided to attend. They looked uncomfortable but present, which was all I had asked for. Later, I learned that Beatrice had organized a family dinner on the same evening as our wedding, a silent protest against their exclusion. The news didn't bother me. For the first time, I had defined the terms of my relationship with my siblings, rather than accepting the terms they dictated. The fallout continued after the honeymoon. My mother called while Quinn and I were still unpacking. "Natalie, what was that wedding? I saw the pictures, and honestly, I expected more from you. Everything looked so simple, nothing like your siblings' weddings. That dress, you deserved something more glamorous. Why didn't you have it in a church? Your sister had something much nicer. That wedding didn't seem worthy of our family." I gripped the phone tightly, momentarily speechless. Then, finding my voice. "Mom, the only thing that wasn't worthy was your attitude. You were barely invited, yet you feel entitled to criticize? You saw pictures of a day that brought me joy, and your only response is to compare it unfavorably to weddings I wasn't even allowed to attend. Why?" "You're being so selfish, Natalie," she responded, her voice rising. "Do you think you can just cut us out of your life? That's not normal. You've always been resentful, and now you're taking it out on us. What did we do to deserve this?" I couldn't maintain my composure any longer. "What did you do? Let's refresh our memories, Mom. You supported my exclusion from every significant family event. I was never important enough to be included. But now you expect me to prioritize all of you as if nothing happened? That's hypocrisy. And truthfully, the only thing that could have ruined my wedding was inviting people who have consistently devalued me." Silence hung between us before she responded with cold contempt. "You're ungrateful. We did everything for you, and this is how you repay us? You're abandoning your family for a man who barely just came into your life. You'll regret this." I ended the call before she could continue. There was no point arguing with someone who would never acknowledge their role in the damage done. The drama escalated when my siblings, clearly encouraged by my mother, began flooding the family chat with messages. Beatrice wrote, "You've destroyed this family, Natalie. Congratulations on pushing away everyone who ever loved you." Fernando added, "I hope the husband you chose is worth it, because you've lost everything for him." I read each message while Quinn watched silently, concerned but respectful of my handling of the situation. After several minutes of scrolling through their vitriol, I left the group chat without replying. In the days that followed, my phone filled with private messages and missed calls, all of which I ignored. My mother even appeared at our door unannounced, but I spoke to her through the barely opened door. "Mom, there's no point to this. You only know how to criticize and belittle me. I don't want any more of that in my life." "Family is forever, Natalie," she shouted from the hallway. "You can't just eliminate us because you're hurt." I opened the door just enough to look her directly in the eyes. Family should mean support, respect, and love, not manipulation and constant criticism. If that's all you have to offer, then yes, I can eliminate you from my life, and that's exactly what I'm doing. I closed the door while she continued shouting, but her words no longer reached me. The decision had been made. 2 years have passed since then. The few attempts they've made to contact me have contained the same accusations and criticism, showing me nothing has changed. My life with Quinn is focused on building something neither of us had before, a relationship based on genuine respect and unconditional love. The most significant change came 3 months ago when I discovered I was pregnant. As I stared at the positive test, tears filling my eyes, Quinn wrapped his arms around me, whispering, "We're going to raise this child with so much love that they'll never doubt their place in our family." From that moment, we knew our child would only be surrounded by people who truly valued them, which meant my birth family had no place in their life. Yet somehow, as news often does, word of my pregnancy reached them. A former college friend who still kept in touch with Beatrice had seen my pregnancy announcement on social media and mentioned it during a chance encounter at a local store. My mother's message came first. "Natalie, I heard you're pregnant. Despite everything, we're your family, and it's important for the baby to have their grandparents around." Then came Beatrice. "Congratulations on the pregnancy. Despite all our fights, we're siblings, and I know you'll need support. We're here for you and the baby." Fernando was more direct. "Hold on to your grudge if you want, but at least let us meet our niece, nephew. They deserve to know they have a big family." I read these messages in silence while Quinn held my hand supportively. "You don't have to reply," he reminded me. "You don't owe them anything. This is our moment, and we only need those who truly care about us." When my mother appeared at our door the following week, I was prepared. Opening the door just enough to see her, I stated clearly before she could speak, "Mom, don't insist. You're not part of my life, and you won't be part of my child's life either." "Natalie, you can't do this," she protested, tears forming. "We're your family. This baby is part of us too." "I'm not going to let my child experience what I did," I replied firmly. "I want them to grow up surrounded by genuine love, without manipulation, criticism, or emotional games. That's something you and the others never provided." She began crying, but I recognized these weren't tears of genuine regret. They were tears of thwarted entitlement. I closed the door without further discussion. It was painful but necessary. The messages continue to arrive occasionally, but they no longer affect me. My focus is entirely on my pregnancy, my husband, and our future child. We're now in the 2nd trimester, having just had our 20-week scan that confirmed we're having a healthy baby girl. We've already started preparing the nursery in soft yellows and greens, creating the warm, loving environment I never had growing up. Some might call it selfish to keep my family away from my child. I call it protection. I know my child will grow up in a safe and loving home where they will always be valued, always be included, and always know they matter. My family can continue to blame me and insist I'm wrong, but their opinions no longer hold power over me. For the first time, I have control over my life and the life I'm bringing into this world, and that is more freeing than they could ever understand. Before you go, here's a quick bonus for sticking around. If you love learning and growing like I do, you need to try audiobooks. I've got an exclusive deal with Audible. Your first month is completely free. That's access to over 500,000 titles, zero cost to you. All the details are waiting in the description. Don't miss this one.